So the next myth that I would like to discuss is one that kind of has three little parts to it as well. And so we often have people come in and say, hey, you know what? Squats aren't good for your knees. We shouldn't be doing squats. Or deadlifts aren't good for your back, so we shouldn't be doing any deadlifts. And overhead press shouldn't be doing overhead press is not good for your shoulders. And those general statements just are not true. Absolutely. You can come in here and or anywhere and have, you know, arthritis in your knees. And maybe you shouldn't squat that deep. Or you may have some compression fractures in your back and osteoporosis issues, and you really should stay away from the hip hinge or a deadlift motion. And possibly you have some rotator cuff tear or some kind of impingement in your shoulder, so you shouldn't press overhead. But for the most part, those are outlying situations that you maybe came from your doctor or your physical therapist that says, hey, don't do those things. But does that mean you should never do them again? Does that mean that you never squat again, or you never deadlift, you never overhead press again if you don't have those type of orthopedic issues? I don't believe that to be true. Us as fitness professionals need to go through a screening process. We use a functional movement screen, and in that screening process, we determine and decide what we need to do, what we need to correct, whether it's a mobility issue with your ankle or thoracic mobility, or it might be a stability issue with your core or your pelvis. Maybe it's a flexibility issue. We need to teach your body to get better, to move better, to be able to do these motions. So think about this for a second. You're never supposed to squat again. What, are you going to stand up the rest of your life? You're never going to sit down in a chair? You're never going to sit on the toilet again? You should never deadlift again. Don't ever deadlift because it's bad for your back. How are you going to get the groceries out of the back of your car if you don't deadlift? It's a hip hinge. Wouldn't it be better if we taught the motion correctly and built the strength to be able to do it properly, to be able to get those groceries out of your trunk? And so we're never going to overhead press. So from now on, we're not going to use any of those cabinets in the kitchen above our shoulders. Okay? You can't use any of those cabinets because you can't go overhead. You can't bring, oh my God, don't bring those arms overhead. It's just not true. How are you going to put stuff away up in the attic? You need to be able to press overhead. You need to be able to deadlift. You need to be able to squat. You need to be able to do these motions in life to function correctly. You know, we believe the body moves in certain movement patterns. We train movement patterns. For example, the lower body will squat. It'll hip hinge or deadlift, overhead press. Pardon me, lower body. It'll lunge and a single leg stand. So that's the four ways the lower body moves. Upper body will do a horizontal push, vertical push, horizontal, and vertical row. That's how the body moves. So we need to train all those movement patterns. So our job, again, as a coach, is to figure out why your squat might not be good. Squats in general are not a bad exercise. They just might not be good for you in the way you do a squat. So let's take a look at the functional movement screen. Let's take a look at your ankle mobility. Maybe you got poor ankle mobility, and that's what's causing you not to be able to squat correctly. Or let's take a look at can you touch your toes? What's your active straight leg raise like? If you can't touch your toes, then you probably should not be deadlifting. And let's take a look at your thoracic mobility, one of the screenings in the functional movement screen. If your thoracic mobility is not good, certainly don't overhead press. And we won't have you overhead press. Or if your ankle mobility is no good, we're not going to have you squat. But we are going to do some things to try to fix those movement patterns so that you are able to perform these activities correctly and better in your life. Now, we have an adage here in our gym that everybody does everything. Doesn't matter if we train teenagers all the way up into your 80s. Everybody does everything, unless you have an orthopedic issue that stops you from doing that. So, do I have an 18-year-old athlete squat? Absolutely. Do I have an 87-year-old woman squat? Absolutely. But we're going to find the level of squat that they can do best, and we're going to try and improve that squat to the best of their ability so they can function better in life. Now, we always hear that, hey, you know what? Don't squat below 90 degrees. It's not good for your knees or any of that stuff. But there may be some people out there that have the mobility and stability and have the range of motion to be able to squat below 90 degrees. So go ahead and squat below 90 degrees. It might hurt their knees worse if they don't go below 90 degrees. But there also might be someone that can only get to maybe 110 degrees, 120 degrees, or just parallel to the ground. So that's what we're going to squat to, because we don't want to lose these movement patterns. You don't want to stop being able to move through life the way you want to be able to move. Without movement, you don't have life. So let's train those patterns. Um, those are not myths. Pardon me, those are myths. Squats, deadlifts, overhead press, all movement patterns that you do need to train. You just need to train them correctly. Exercise performed correctly is good for the body. Exercise not performed correctly is not good for the body. It's going to hurt the body. It's not going to get you progress. And it just shouldn't be done. So those three movement patterns can be done in workout programs, and they're not going to cause the pain and anguish that we think that they might be causing.